these areas. The orange would be a secure corridor from the housing pod to the existing jail elevator. And then we have a small area that's indicated as court holdings for adults and juveniles. You'd use that existing elevator to go up to the third floor for courts. And they would utilize that same route, off that elevator to get to the courtroom.
The same orange area.
Correct. So that would be a secure corridor. The green area is inmate medical areas, so we renovate some of that area for, that would have to be brought into the jail perimeter, renovation of that existing space, as well as jail support in the blue, and then as well as jail staff lockers in that blue area. What gets conflicted is that orange area basically is gonna be the perimeter of the jail. So anything, say the south of that plan, would have to, you could occupy that in any other function other than potentially the jail because of the egress, et cetera, and it kind of splits off the building. So that's what we were looking at. We did look at potentially some other areas, if that's not the premise of renovating the second floor, what else we could do. Excuse me. So that's the second floor, the existing, Sally Port, and that jail elevator would still be utilized for juveniles access, so you bring them up, cause you gotta keep the adults and juveniles separate to get them to courts. So there's a separation between those, we can't have juveniles going down the same spaces in the corridors as the adults, so that's why the separation.
So there is a second elevator now?
We'd always have to have an elevator.
But we're just gonna use our existing elevator?
Existing in the jail would be 4 courts.
Okay.
Any questions on that second?
So, so this is the,
So that's
third floor?
Yeah, that would be the third floor, so we have the 20 additional cells, and then the multi-purpose room as well as that, and then access, we have to have emergency stairs, that's also in that corner, kinda laid out. These are still somewhat conceptual, as far as locations, but we did get it, and then we got it to the, 60 bed count.
So essentially the model that they took is that second and third floor, view it as it's the pod that you guys would have toured, that would sit on the ground. They raised it up 1 floor, they took jail support and put it underneath there. So the footprint that was driven by that northeast parking lot, not exceeding that was the kind of the design parameters that they were able to do. So reducing square footage with reduction in bed count, and then obviously, because of the real estate, slid it underneath the pod, so it's up one story.
So what offices or facilities get displaced that are currently in the courthouse?
You would have anything on that second floor in that south building. Where the blue and green are, anything in there would have to get displaced.
And what is there now?
Children and family.
What?
All of children and family.
Human
Part of
Yeah.
HHS.
HHS.
Yeah.
All of HHS?
Just part of, just one department, HHS.
What we're not accounting for is, right now, some of that renovation into the existing second floor jail. We have to do some additional work, gets costly to do that, but that's potentially a space that could be opened up for that as well. But then again, that's additional cost into that, to meet the jail project.
It becomes a timing or a phasing element in order to open up the jail. The support spaces that they have referenced there need to be constructed. So we were under the premise that those departments could be put in a different location, so that will have to be something that's resolved as to where they go. So this option 3, from a price perspective, we have run the numbers based on where the markets are right now. If you had the documents ready today, construction documents ready today, put out on the street to bid within the next month, we believe the number would be $32.5 million. Now, when you do a project like this, you need to carry a construction contingency. We would recommend a construction contingency of $1.5 to $2 million for unknown, especially when we're doing some renovation that would be in there. So we would earmark that construction budget at $34.5 million if you carry a $2 million contingency. The unknown, or the element that we need to account for, is when you decide to approve a project and how much longer we wait, because that's in the market today. So there's a lot of discussion about inflation, what happens in the next calendar year. So if a decision was made in the upcoming months, next 3-4 months, to move forward with design, Corey and his team then could get construction documents underway and potentially have the project bid out late third quarter of this year. If we wait beyond that, then we're talking about it in the next spring, and that's when we have to talk about what do we put for an inflation factor. So timing is gonna be a key component. So if you look at the inflation piece of it, and you're a $34 to $34.5 million job today, and we're a year from now, you're more than likely to be on the safe side from a projection to add another $1.5 million to $2 million of inflation. So you're probably talking between 36 and 37. Again, we're dealing with conceptual drawings at some level, some of them are more detailed, but that gives you the parameters in regards to where we were. I know it's not at the 25 million that was the target, but it's been, I would say that the reduction has been so significant that I don't know what other square footage could be reduced from this without compromising the overall scope and program. And I think that's kind of the element of where we are in regards to the parameters of the direction for the last few years.
Essentially, what you're saying is that you follow this plan and, complete as got it pulled, this courthouse is gonna become nothing but a government center and jail. And you're not gonna have, there's not gonna be room for health and human services and those type of offices out there when we're done.
Well, what Corey just talked about is that in this model right now, we're gonna be displacing that second floor. So it sits vacant. There is a need right now, but I can tell you from a storage perspective of evidence or some of those elements that you could utilize that square footage from other locations that you have within the county. It could also be a space that you say we do need to earmark and open some of that up for renovation for other offices. So you have the space to do so. It's just not addressed in this scope of work the way it's laid out here right now. The pros and cons, and we'll get into some of that. Obviously, we're displacing all of your parking there. We're changing I mean, I know there's an entrance there now. I don't know how highly it's used, so, you know, we'll get into the pros and cons of each option after we get through the next option as well.
Any questions, further questions on this option?
I guess I'm just curious as to what this, possible 34 million price tag, what's the interest on that? Do you have any idea?
No, what are interest rates right now for something?
Yeah, again, they're projecting, I've been seeing that they've been averaging anywhere from 3.5% to 4.5% of projections. So we would have to figure out what that, are you talking annually, or are you talking over the life of the borrowing?
Over the life of the borrower?
Yeah, I don't know what that number would be. We could get the number, but I don't know what that is.
Cause that's gonna add to the total figure here, obviously.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, we're not looking at just 34 million, we also have to take into consideration the fact that there's gonna be interest on this figure as well.
Oh, yeah, the first cost, though, when you're talking about contract costs, yeah. Anytime you do a borrowing, there's interest costs that's tied to that, correct?
So, I don't, you know, that's something that is gonna definitely play into this decision, I think. You know.
What's the final proposed use of the current jail?
That has yet to be identified.
Some of it's being used still with the jail as far as hosted court holding. You also have the central control there that will be remaining right now. It's basically this northern portion and potentially can be renovated. Maybe that's the space for these departments to move over, vice versa.
The west entrance, the current entrance here, coming to the jail office, the jail area into this office, is that still gonna be as a accessible entrance or no?
It would still remain, I think it's gonna come down to policy. If you're gonna have one point of entry, that would be a premise of its exit only, right? So it's gonna come back to what you do for a security policy, but the way the configuration of that door remains, we're proposing that it stays the same as you see it today. No matter what you decide as the county, whether you wanna lock it down or you still wanna function the way you're functioning right now.
Jeff, do you have anything you want to weigh in on this at all?
No, I guess I just, I still think that, we've gone backwards in the number of beds. That we're not planning out for the future as far as we need to. We're increasing, our beds, and I just don't know how that's going to carry us 20 to 30, 40 years out, so. I don't know.
Do we have another option, Corey wants to go over it?
Yeah.
I guess I'll give you the buzzkill, it's
So
more,
if
it's
I-
more expensive. So if you wanna spend time on that.
What I understand though is with this option, you said 60 beds, you know, with the capability of going to 70.
Correct,
Is
yes.
that right? You still think that's light?
I do, in my opinion.
I mean, cause we're basically, we're almost doubling. We are doubling.
From 50 to.
No, I mean, I shouldn't say that. What I meant was, we are doubling the capacity, what we need as far as to the average number of inmates that we have. We've been having that for the last.
Today, well, say, 2 years ago, our number was in the 50s. But now it is, like I said before, there's that pendulum that swings up and down based on, how the court operates and how it works right now. The court doesn't wish to put people in jail. They do signature bonds instead of cash bonds. And so we're not housing the people, they're turning these people who commit crimes back out onto the street. And I think that has a lot to do with the crimes that are committed. I mean, yeah, I'll do it, I'll go to jail, I'll be out tomorrow and I'll be on my way. That's my opinion, that's how I see it. And that makes me very nervous because it's my job to keep this county safe. So, that's where I see it.
But, I mean, keeping in mind too the fact that, granted, I get your point. However, I mean, we still retain the option that if we need to do out-of-town housing, we can still do that. We get.
At a cost.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's the cost up front or a continual cost in the future. I mean, I guess that's how you gotta look at it. You're gonna have this cost, is you do it up front, or do you just continue to add to it as you go? Because if you start housing out of county, you're gonna hire more people, more vehicles, and the risk of people getting hurt, injured, or escaping increases every time you take someone out of the jail. And, again, from day one, I've been all about security and safety, and I'm not gonna change my mind on that. So, that's my opinion. We all have our opinions, and
Of course,
we should be
that's-
able to.
That's what this country's all about.
So,
All right.
There's nothing in that 34 million that covers all the moving, changing around, moving departments, there's none of that in there.
No, I mean, we're talking about just construction costs, meaning, your professional fees, all your permitting would be in there. Anything that would be a fit in regards to furnishing, detention equipment, all that's just the jail component itself, right? But, the physical move of other departments, and some of that is yet to be defined about where we put some of those departments.
Yeah.
That's the kind of the gray area, cause we didn't get into that level of planning.
I'm just curious, like, as I had mentioned at the last meeting, I believe that if we actually vacated the second floor, which would be total vacate of House and Human Resources, or Human Services rather, that should help you as far as construction, correct?
Yeah, that's what he's shown there, is that you're renovating portions of that.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, that's why the
So, I mean,
number has gone down for two reasons. Because of the reduction in program and number of bed count, the square footage has been reduced. And then the square footage of new construction has, some of it's been moved into renovation. So you're seeing both of those, you're seeing the benefit of both of those with the reduction. What you see in regards to increased costs because of this model, the moment that you stack a pod, so take the two-story pod that you guys toured, right? And you've got all of your CMU, concrete block components that are constructing that and everything that has to build that. The moment that you take and you raise that up a floor, because you still have to get all the materials and all the equipment that's in there, the productivity of that contractor goes down in regards to how quickly they can build that. So you gotta take into account a decrease in productivity because it's now elevated. It's not as efficient as if we've got it on a lower floor that's there. So there's a balance of all of that we have to price in regards to the elements that are tied to that. So there's a multitude of situations that are there.
We are calling this option 5. You can see it on the site. I think the first thing indicated is we have to demo some of the existing buildings on that site. It still takes up, this one is not stacked. It's basically a single story. The housing plan is 2 stories, but essentially everything is on 1 story. So we have, again, the Sally Port booking and pre-booking, kitchen and laundry. The receiving is close to the existing receiving dock. And then out front where your current main entrance is, that's where the housing pod is. If you go to the next page, 2nd floor, talked about a couple of different things. Now I'm showing an area for the single point of entry that's colored in blue. If it's in that location or if it's in the north side of the building, that's yet to be determined. But essentially, some of those areas that would, if you wanted to go with a single point of entry, we'd have to do some remodeling to get the body scanners, et cetera, into those areas. But this is the first floor, all of that. See at this one, we have 21 cells on the first floor, 22 cells on the second floor. We got 60 beds. Future could be 76 if you got proof for doubling up some of those single cells on that first floor. And then again, we encountered some of the remodeling, et cetera, into there. And again, we're also adding the cost for demoing the existing buildings. It's also not accounting for relocation of any of those departments in those buildings. Go to the second floor, and we got the 2-story housing pod. Areas that are colored are renovation. So you have a shorter distance, a little bit of shorter of a distance to get from housing pod to the existing jail elevator, and utilizing some of the existing jail for that court holding for juveniles and adults. Utilizing that and then getting up to that 3rd floor for the courts. A little bit more renovation as well in that 2nd floor, but again, demoing that floor.
So is this, on this option, does this require a new elevator then?
Yes, yeah, we still have that.
And then the old one goes away?
Whatever's in that building, the existing jail elevator, we're still utilizing
Okay.
to get to courts.
So this option from a cost perspective is $3 million more than the last option. So we've got the demolition, that's tied into that, and then we've got, additional, square footage that's tied into this element here, so about $3 million, $2.8 million, $3 million more than the last one.
So we could look at like 37?
Yeah. 37 with contingency, and then whatever we're gonna decide to do for an inflation factor, depending on when we're gonna move forward with the option.
So we just started looking at kind of the pros and cons of each option. showed you, pros, again, located on the existing site, we're not closing any streets actually in any of these options. We have the connection through the courts, we're going through that second floor, utilizing some of the existing jail court holding in that, and to access the courts. We were meeting the revised bed quantity as far as the revised bed program. There's a reduction of, building area, and we still maintain the separation between adults and juveniles for the courts. The con is a three-story configuration, it's not as efficient as one that would be on a single story. Be losing all public parking on the existing site, and then every parking would have to be on that south side. Utilizing that front, or losing that front entrance off of the existing east side parking. Additional remodeling on that second floor. One of the concerns on that this option, as you see, as we got this located, here is the existing building. We start to create this little corridor in there, again, snow removal, et cetera, how that's gonna be accomplished, because we do have an entrance for day reporting back in here, there's emergency egress existing back here, but we have a, I'll say narrow, but it is a separation between those two buildings. We do have a distance to get inmates to courts, because you're going through the second floor, come up, and then back into the courts. So essentially the cons. Option 5, staying on the existing site, still maintain that connection, meeting the revised programs. One of the pros is that jail support, is on the first floor and 2-story housing, so that's a little bit more efficient. Front entry, off the existing parking lot remains, so this entry over here, could remain in the option 5, keeping that separation. The cons with 5, if we're demoing a number of your buildings, especially the newest building here on site, additional cost for that. We do have additional, remodeling on that second floor. We are removing the main entrance where your address is for the facility, so that have to be relocated either, you know, we kind of, if we talk, do you keep that one off the parking lot, or does it go to the north side of the building? And loss of public parking on the site. One thing I looked at, I'd like to get, I know, Brad had concerns of, getting a multi-purpose room on that first floor with them. We'd still have to try to get that to work in there. Any of these options, we don't need that 25 million. One thing pointed out we were trying to avoid, but, we can't, is the existing tower in option 5 would have to be relocated again, and that's additional cost as well. And I don't think that, Kurt, you didn't have that into that as
Yeah, I
well.
think we were questioning whether we would have to move it or not, we would have to figure that out, parameters, that look like.
And then the relocation of departments, what's that cost, where are they gonna go, how do we do this?
So, this 37 doesn't represent the tower.
The question is if we have to relocate this other, until we get into a deeper design, we won't know to what extent that is. So there's a potential there.
So it could be a potential.
Yeah.
It's a, it's a risk that's associated with it, and only because the foundation for that addition to the south could undermine the foundation for the north. But until we get into more detailed design, we didn't know that.
So to answer your first question, to open the meeting, we did not meet the $25 million goal. But
I didn't think you would.
and I think you understood from the last meeting, we knew it was a challenge, and I think what we have presented venture in the task for them to do so, I think they've done a good job of maximizing the real estate that you have on that side of the campus. I would say that, neither one of these options are ideal from an operational perspective, but it fits the parameters that you have given to us in regards to, you know, what the expectations were coming out of the last meeting.
Anybody have any questions?
I know, I still would like to know how much both of these are gonna cost in work on the old buildings, to put them in the picture. And I'll go back to it, we just bid a 100-foot bridge for ATVs, snowmobiles and everything else, it's $100,000, not insulated, not anything. But the cost of what it's gonna take to do all these switches is probably would pay for that. And I don't think it should be $3 million, I think that's absurd. I talked to other people and they said, what? But anyhow, the cost of doing all the work with this that we have to do is a lot of money. To be ready to even start going forward with either one of these plans, correct? And so, well, big time difference, but.
Option 3, there's limited disruption day 1, but we are disrupting departments in that south wing, correct?
Yeah. So, you know, like Jeff is talking about, somewhere down the road, if we gotta start shipping prisoners out of county, what's that cost? I mean, all these things gotta be figured into this, cause I still think if it's possible, the best way to do this is across the street, it has room for expansion if we need it.
Okay, you're talking to Skywalk, okay.
Yeah, and what's the $3 million against what it's gonna cost to retrofit everything over here, rent space, move them out, electronics, everything. When I built the house, I knew how much it was gonna cost to do this, I knew how much it was gonna cost to renovate that, and how we could do it so that people could live in it if they wanted to. You know, and I had all that down. Okay, it's a smaller scale, but it's still, you know, $100,000 plus, so it can be done. I don't know, I don't see any price for what this is really gonna cost, $34 million for the new construction. But the heartaches that are gonna happen to all our staff in the meantime, and the building, and the work, what is that?
Yeah, so I think in fairness, based on the direction that we were given, it was really to stay on jail design and focus the fit on the campus.
Yeah.
And what we have talked about is that the displacement of those departments, we need to engage those departments to have a further discussion to get to the point that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And that is a missing component, completely agree with you. But it is a number that we can find for you, based on the premise that we had from the last directive, it's really what we brought back to you. But I would agree that there's other costs outside of what we're proposing to you that we would have to consider for each of these options. But if you want further exploration in one of these options, then we can do so, get you that information. And evaluate the other options that we've given to you previously.
And back to my original statement, I don't know how many meetings ago, send us this stuff ahead of time, so we can actually look at it, come up with some questions when we get here. It doesn't do me any good to look at it right now and come up with any sensible questions. We need time to look at it, I mean, that's part of our job, to look at it and study it and then come here, so. I'm just asking that again for whatever happens in the future.
Yeah, and just to give you the parameters of this floor plan, because of the constraints of time, I will say that Venture did a majority of this without much input from the county, speed timing of being able to respond back to this. Is that if one of these options isn't selected, we will have more detailed meetings and then be able to get that to you in regards to the correspondence. This is merely a concept here to be able to see, does it fit, and what's the parameters of cost? So we're really in the very preliminary stages of, you know, finding another option.
I must apologize, to you and to the group, but I would like to introduce, I meant to do this at the beginning, but I would like to introduce John Caleb. He is our new county board chairman. So, this is John Caleb.
Welcome, you're joining the fun.
I'm only one person, I'm in my minority position, that's clear. But I have to say my piece.
Well, and I think that's really when Corey talked about this being a working session, because obviously from the last meeting, there was a directive given, and it was, can you get there? And like I said, if we didn't get there, you know, we're showing you some parameters of what it would look like if we were to reduce scope. You guys may come out of today's meeting and reduce scope further, because budget is a driver. And I saw the first agenda item, right? There may be a discussion that you didn't get there, what else can you cut? And I'm gonna tell you, any further cuts are gonna be very, very painful in regards to the program, to the point of, is it logical to do so, right? But I think from the directive that we were given, this is a good starting point for you guys to look at it. Like you just got done stating, does this make sense compared to going across the street? I can tell you that the investment of going across the street could be an evaluation of, does it make sense to reduce the scope of the bed count across the street? It's an exercise that we could present to you. If 70 is the number over there, we still have the skywalk. Whether you agree or disagree with the number, skywalks are not, they're not inexpensive. And I know an ATV bridge is significantly different than what we're talking
Yeah,
about.
I realize that.
So those are the sorts of things that we have to be aware of. But at least there's some parameters to show that we've reduced scope and the numbers are going down. And then it's gonna be an evaluation of what is the long range plan. It's one of the first things that I told the sheriff, when I saw the model that Venture gave to us, is that I think that this is limiting your future long range planning for this campus. Meaning that if we do park the jail right there, and you have to replace the courthouse at a later date, where does it go? Where if we would park the jail across the street, it would potentially mean that you would have to acquire properties, and someone could argue, if you can acquire properties on the north or south, you absolutely could. But it would make some sense for us to have some discussions about what's the long range plan, when the courthouse needs to be replaced, and where does it go? So, I believe strongly in master planning and being able to give you guys what that future looks like after this project is built, and when the next generation has to deal with it. So that's one of the things that I would stress, that we wanna make sure we're thinking through where that may go. And it may be a solution up there, maybe on the east side, north side, whatever that may look like.
I'd like to throw 2 cents in here. Kind of from the get-go, I'm kind of really against the skywalk. And it's not my favorite thing, but you look at the walkways that are being put on here to get the inmates to court from the east side of the lot to the north, or to the west side of the lot, is no further than the skywalk. If we did it over there, we don't disrupt anybody here, so the cost savings that you're gonna have there can help build that skywalk if that's how it has to go. Like, again, the skywalk is not my favorite thing, but it's the same thing as what you're doing coming from the east to the west. It's a long corridor that you gotta transport inmates back and forth, and that's the only purpose of that corridor. So,
There's also, by having it across the street, it will eliminate a lot of the demolition costs.
correct.
Which is basically offset the cost of the skywalk.
Right, and that's kind of what I, leading to what Phil was saying is, yeah, it's gonna cost some money for that skywalk, but you're gonna save the money of tearing these buildings down and piecing them all back together, and then, all that, so.
I will say that in option 3, there's a limited demolition, there's some interior demolition for renovation. The demolition cost comes in that last option, the north.
But I also see a benefit across the street versus remodeling here. The fact that you're not going to be disrupting all existing offices.
You also have, if you do across the street, you have the potential of any expansion,
Yep.
future work, you have that availability.
I don't wanna have all the old, I'll just put it bluntly, have all the old people cross all these streets around here. I mean, that one is insane at school time. This one here can be, that one down there can be at times, it's just, I don't like crossing the street. It's bad enough they gotta walk all the way around the courthouse when they get there.
By doing that, you're not gonna take away your, off-street parking on the east side and north side.
Well, I don't think there's choice parking around your street. Because we got the lot across the street, we got that vacant lot in the church. So that parking, the existing parking was, were proposed jail would be on, across the street. That's still gonna have some parking. I don't think we're short, we have a shortage of parking.
I mean, all good points, obviously, but then we're looking again at, you know, an additional $10 to $12 million
I don't
to go
understand why.
across there, and,
So again, we haven't run the numbers on a reduced, bed count across the street. So the number that I'd given you, across the street with that, skywalk was significantly higher than what we're talking about. So we're not gonna take all of that, we'd see some reduction if we would look at, a 60-bed pod across the street with a double bunking to 70, you're gonna see some savings there. It won't be all of it, right? The skywalk it's an investment, right? Whether we arm wrestle over, whether it's $2 or $3 million, it's still gonna be an
Yeah,
investment.
I accept.
Yeah. So you're right, that's something that we're not gonna get away from the skywalk value. But we did reduce the scope only in these two models, because before we were running at that much larger bed count number, so the parameters could be reduced and visit there.
If you had a new area, you tried putting the same number of beds in, it could be much more efficient
Oh, yeah.
construction.
There's things about the way that, and I'm not gonna let you guys do, but they squeezed it into the space there, right?
Yeah, I accept that,
The
that's
configuration
okay.
of the pod.
That's what some of the committee wanted to do.
No, it's an exercise that
Yeah.
we need to go through.
Well, we didn't wanna go outside the bounds of the existing campus, other than if we went across the street.
Yeah.
Now, it makes that as two, options, start out.
Our previous meeting was in November, and we kind of, I don't wanna say shut down, we had different parameters, right? It's, 25.
Yeah, but that's-
So we never had the opportunity to show you what we had in that.
We wanted to go to
We had the two options of closing my current that was eliminated and then the sky bridge. We did do some renderings on the sky bridge, now that can all change as far as it looks. But, I do have some, up here, I don't have the report to, what first start the sky bridge and then this will have on the jail.
Well bigger and then we'll be back.
We'll sell
Yeah, that
everything.
can fluctuate.
They sell it everywhere else.
So that would be, here's the housing lot.
Which pod was that counted for?
Well,
That was for
size
the-
wise, it was for the full.
That was the big, okay.
But, so with the reduction of scope, then it could be reduced.
See it, Tom?
And there's two of these, we both 60-bed option.
So where is he?
Same as this one, across the street, may not have to purchase any additional.
So this would be the housing pod.
Yeah, I mean,
and the sky
I think it's
bridge.
an element of what's the utilization of the existing space.
Right.
So he would have to lay that out.
This is around right now.
Now, the pods are all
You
here.
could do some additional parking just to have and then a little
Probably
walk,
he's gotta factor in that also.
and then here's the housing, we have like visitation, and here's the.
There's two in the jail, first we get out, he's paying the price of water.
Oh, yeah.
Sure somebody knows something.
It's for sale, yeah.
But that could change if it's not, good. If you get a private agency, it could be.
So.
We did have,
Go to,
oh, sorry.
Jeff, he's got a spot for a skywalk. The jail across the street.
So here's the housing pod, sidewalk going to the existing building.
Short one, you're gonna have to stand up in the back there.
Look what that does to the downtown.
Yeah,
That's a beautiful. That's what I'm saying.
It is.
but the city's going to fight it because you're gonna have to use truck traffic on there for the height.
Like, no,
No.
How high is it gonna be up?
it's gotta
30
be
feet?
14 feet.
14? That might not be.
That's for his fire truck, you can underneath it.
city limits.
And then you ship and have the approval trade.
There you go.
The inmates would stand in, if the inmates could all
Could stand on the walkover, crosswalk over,
And the
catch
crosswalk
candy.
and watch. Have them throw candy.
There you go.
Fire meets those requirements.
Ladder truck is. So as a day-to-day operational standpoint, going across the street, keeping everything in a line is better than the way these other ones are kinda, they're crammed in there, you're right, they're crammed in there.
Stacked, and they're stacked.
And they're stacked together, so this way they come in, they go through the booking process, they go to the housing process, it's all in the same, all on the same level, other than the second tier for the pod. Operational, it's just better for us to have everything on one floor. And
Safer.
accessible, and safer, a lot safer. So I agree with Bill, I think the south side is the better option.
Well, I'm not saying definitively that, cause I still wanna see the price.
I understand that, no, I understand.
But I see trade-offs here.
Yeah. No,
I see trade-offs.
I agree.
And, one across the street was more beds.
Yeah.
Originally, it was a lot higher,
Yeah,
then that
right,
got
yeah.
cut down.
The exercise would be for us to go back and look at what the reduction is, cause I didn't do that exercise, right?
Wow.
If we took it down to a 60 bed, that could be double bumped to 70,
Comparable what we got here.
yeah, see the configuration that we would do with the layout of the jail support, I'm sure it's gonna be very similar to what we had before. And then, give you some pricing parameters that would be tied back to that.
Or even, with talking with the sheriff, even having maybe 70 to 90 beds, I mean.
Yeah, I mean,
Cause I don't remember what your final thing was over there, cause I know originally something was up to 132 beds, I know that
Oh,
got
yeah,
knocked down.
we had a real large number and we've been.
Right, and you keep,
Sure.
so I
Well,
don't
the
know
original
what the
estimate was
latest.
88.
Seventy, some original, up to
90 or something, yeah.
80, I looked on 88, I don't know.
So you got 88, maybe that's what it was.
We've done it
95.
multiple times, we've had several different bed counts.
Well,
So-
and some of that was from Whitehall.
And it sounds like we're to send you back to the drawing board.
I'm fine with that, I mean, this is getting through so that you guys are comfortable with the scope,
This
right?
is what we're doing in this for.
Yeah.
To get the feedback and where you wanna go. And I'll just throw, this is what we had for, if you did close down Meyer, I don't think anybody saw that as well.
We don't look at that,
That's
we'll be
not-
cursed.
don't wanna look at it.
We'll be
cursed.
That's not gonna happen.
It won't give you it, it's easy.
Wow.
Trust me.
Brakes came on quick.
I'm just.
You want our opinion?
Just being realistic, we don't have to happen.
I think the premise behind going through these options, because remember the long range, plan of getting this accomplished is a communications plan to the community. And what we need to do is we need to come to something that you as the board support, that we went through the exercise to explore all of the options, and that you landed on. You may not all agree on the same option, but at least you have all come to some semblance of an agreement that this makes the most sense to be explored multiple. So I have no problem with revisiting another option.
And I think to Kurt's point too, as you move forward into a communications plan, there's going to be constituents that say, why couldn't you just put this on the east parking lot? As all of you on this committee have been along on this journey, you will now have that understanding of being like, I get what you're saying, but it's not that easy. It's a much more difficult process than just putting it in place, a vacant place that's on that property. There's so many more complicated pieces that go with that.
Well, I mean,
And
I'll tell you what the most thing that I hear from constituents, why do you need a new jail?
Yep.
A
You're gonna get that.
lot.
You're gonna get that.
But I think once you get your
So I think,
communications up and going, you'll be able to explain them answers.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, I don't want you to think that we work some kind of magic, everybody's gonna say, hey, yeah, we agree with you. We're at least gonna give them the facts in regards to why there is a need and the solution that's there, and that you're not overbuilding. That's the premise of this, that you're wisely using the taxpayer dollars to address an issue that's at hand. There may still be people that walk out of those auditoriums or town halls and say, that guy's all nuts. It'll happen, right? Be aware of it. But they'll at least be informed about all of what's behind the scenes of what we're working on. And that's the goal, is to be transparent with them about what's going on and the issue that you have to deal with, and a hard decision you gotta make, cause it is a difficult decision.
There's already a letter to the editor about the country club for the prisoners
Sure.
already.
Four
Oh,
stories.
Oh, yeah.
And you deal with that because it's a viewpoint of these, they call them these spa places, right, that all the Hollywood stars, and that's the picture that some people have.
Or Martha Stewart went?
Yeah, exactly. That's the perception that's what these are, and it's so far from the truth. And we've offered that if somebody wants to go sit in one of those cells and we lock the door and they hear that clunk, it's no spa. It's not. So it's there to serve a purpose, and it's needed to be used.
And the only other thing I'm gonna bring up now, it's gonna wait for a couple more meetings, but in talking to people, is we need serious, solid documentation on what the state is telling us we have to do. We can't come up and say, well, they can't do this because we gotta do this. We need the state to say, this is how you do it. This is what you're faced with, you know? Cause it's really easy to talk in stuff out here, but, okay, no, we have 19 categories, we have to solve them all, we can't put these together. We need it written out, I think, you know, as part of the presentation.
And
As well as the plan.
along those lines too, we need to know just exactly when the actual mandatory, absolute end of line date, when the state expects these things to happen.
So,
I mean, how much time do we have?
I guess I can address those questions because I've addressed them in other counties, right? So, the classification discussion will come up when we do our communications plan.
Okay.
And I'm gonna tell you right now, it's not a black and white discussion. And that's where it starts to become difficult to explain every situation. And the way that, the example that I use most often is that we may identify the male and the female, it's the other elements that factor into that. And the biggest example that I had with one county, if it was the chief deputy, the sheriff stood up and said, I had this case that came in, and there were 5 individuals that were arrested on the same case, the same night, in the same situation. Those were 5 completely different classifications that I had to account for in my jail, but I couldn't park them with anybody else. As soon as you give that example to someone, they're like, oh, obviously, we don't want these 2 buddies sitting in the same day room, chit-chatting about what they're gonna tell the investigator when they get to that point. The other elements is when you start to get into mental health and those situations of why they can't be in the same area with others. People wanna take this is all a transgender issue, it's not. But you still have to deal with that because it is in society and you're going to have that situation. So, I know what you're saying, they want a black and white from Mr.
Well, as
DOC.
much as we can get, I realize that
Right,
will be.
right, but it's an explanation, and that's part of when we can get up and explain it, because even from the DOC, they can't give you black and white, because there's so many variables that come in when they start to classify the individual, when they come into the booking, right? So, yeah, there's a lot of that takes place.
That people come up and go, what do you mean 19? It's men and women. I said, okay, you go talk to Jimmy Boy. We can't solve that problem, he can.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, there's a lot of that, thinking that that's what's driving, and it's not. I mean, what George and their team have to deal with in regards to those that they're housing is much different. I think we all know society has changed from what it was 20 years ago. We wish we had it back, but we're dealing with what we have to deal with right now.
And then like your case too, I think a lot of people would understand that, as well as saying, well, do you want the 5 of them sitting in there to come up with a story which is gonna blow all our evidence right out the door? Especially if it was your house? Maybe not.
Exactly. So, it's those sorts of things, and that's really what these steps, I know this may be painstaking and it's stressful for you guys, but we gotta go through these steps so that we can ultimately get to those meetings and explain to them. We've looked at this thing from so many angles, and we're here to communicate to you that the county has to deal with it, and what's the best way to deal with it. 'Cause you don't wanna overspend, but you don't wanna underspend so that you're dealing with the issue 10 years from now. that's as much of a mistake as both of them. We're not opposed to looking at a reduced scope across the street if you want the same parameters, and then come back to you with some of those, elements.
Well, I think that would give us a fair comparison.
Yeah.
Of across the street versus these two proposals here. Now, it's apples to apples.
Yep.
With the exception of the crosswalk.
Skyway.
Skyway, and that can be explained, taken into account just because of the demolition costs.
Do you have a zip line open?
Mhm.
Yeah.
In or out?
Put them in a straight jacket and snap them
That's right.
on.
Put one of those tennis shoes where you
Have
just
them
sit in
over.
and just-
Vacuum tube.
No.
Maybe since, if you re-look at that, you might look at that thing again, or maybe 70, 90 or something,
We can give you parameters.
of parameters,
Sure.
roughly,
We
because.
can start with the 60 and then say if we get back to where we were in that mid to 80s, how much more is it gonna cost us? Absolutely, we can do that.
I agree, I guess, I thank you for bringing these, that's, I like this. Personally, I kinda like the option number 3. I like the idea of keeping it here. Although some of the arguments that you presented are compelling, it's still, it just comes down to a cost figure. We have to look at, what's gonna happen to our constituents regarding this, and it's not gonna be pretty, either way, any way you look at it, it's just. So, that being said, I do feel though, that we do need to cover every possible option that we have, and, if you can come up, send it back to the drawing board and come up with something with the skywalk again, that possibly with that reduction of the bed count, and see what kind of number you come up with that. How soon could we meet again that you could present that to us?
I would say next month.
Yeah, next month without a doubt, if you wanna do the.
I don't think we have meetings scheduled yet, but.
So do you wanna look at like, the second Thursday again?
Sure. I guess the other thing that I would offer to put on that agenda for a deliverable from us is at that point, I would bring you I'm gonna call it the framework of what the website would look like. Because remember, we're gonna take all the data from the study, we're gonna take the data from what the solution may be, we're gonna take the data from all the issues, and we're gonna create a website. We would be in a position where I could show you what that looks like. It's not final, because the final piece would be, we need to figure out what it looks like and then put the fly around that's in there. But I can show you what Trumbull's was, and I'll show you the framework of yours, so you can at least give me some feedback on it.
So this would be like a public education type of?
Yes.
website? Okay.
Yeah, the goal would be, I would bring you the website and a draft of the letter. So if you'll recall, the deliverables is, we were gonna craft a letter on behalf of the county, bring it to you as a draft, you can tweak it, hack it, slash it, however you wanna do it. Essentially, the letter is your way as the board to direct them to the website or to these town hall meetings to say, hey constituents, we're dealing with this issue. We've got some, public information for you that we're inviting you to participate in. Whether you wanna sit in your living room and check out the website on your own time, do so. If you wanna come to the town hall meetings, you can do so. There is an email, link in there that they can send questions anonymously. They can put their name on there, but then we get a response back to them. I give them my kind of personal contact if they've got questions for us. So it won't be done, but I'll bring you the draft of both of those next month so that you can take a look at it and, pick it apart a little bit. So that will be in the proposal, I'll bring you some price options.
And also not forgetting Phil's request, if we could get a preliminary view of what you're gonna.
The issue that we have with some of this, and we're gonna figure out how we deliver it, is that there is security elements that starts to run into from a floor plan perspective. So because we're dealing with a draft, an addition is probably okay, but as we start to look at this, like these, we have to take with us today because there's existing floor plans for security purposes, right? So we would probably, we would have to send to you, would just be the area that we're talking about that is new, knowing that we're more than likely gonna change it, cause what we don't want is for this to be out there, and sheriffs will typically, come back and say, hey, from a security perspective, we don't want our secure building out there for public to plant a skateboard. You know what it is?
Yes, I understand.
Whatever that movie is, name the movie that they're gonna plan to get out, you don't want the floor plan for something. So yeah, we'll find a way to get you some preliminary stuff.
Perfect, thank you.
You mentioned second week in February, is that
The eighth,
the eighth?
does that work for everybody?
That works?
Afternoon, 1 o'clock.
1 o'clock? Okay. Does anyone have any announcements? I don't. Okay, and if not, does anyone have anything else that they would like to speak about?
You want the school, or just the plans?
Other plans? If no one else has anything else to add, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Okay.
John?
How many signatures do you see?
This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you for all the work you guys did.
Yes.
That was a lot of